Take clean energy. Some country is going to be the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. And here's what we can do. We can deploy 500 million more solar panels. We can have enough clean energy to power every home. We can build a new modern electric grid. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of new economic activity.
You're actually going to trot out this old saw again. Didn't President Obama promise us unlimited prosperity from this new green economy miracle 8 years ago? And didn't he promise it again 4 years ago? Matter of fact, didn't President Obama take $500 million of taxpayer money, that's $500 million of your money, and give it to a solar cell company called Solyndra? And didn't $500 million of your money go poof after Solyndra then went bankrupt? Mrs. Clinton, your party is so financially stupid that you poured money into a company that went bankrupt after you stole $500 million from the American people in order to prop it up. Solyndra went bankrupt because the entire idea is bankrupt. Renewables do not scale up to even 5% of our country's total energy needs. You know that. As a matter of fact, the giant Ivanpah solar plant outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, is very heavily touted by your party's president, sucked up another $1,500 million of your money, and now we find it's not able to run without continued government subsidies. Why? Because the electricity generated by the giant Ivanpah solar plant in Nevada costs about $200 per megawatt hour compared to about $35 per megawatt hour for clean burning natural gas. Now, what's worse, much worse than these taxpayer-funded experiments in economic failure is that you Democrats do everything in your power to prevent access to cheap, homegrown American energy. You won't let us build new nuclear plants using abundant meltdown-proof thorium reactors, and you won't let us mine the coal under our feet or drill for the oil under our feet or frack the natural gas under our feet. Cheap, abundant energy costs in America would combat the cheap, abundant labor costs of places like China. But despite your talk, you don't care about bringing jobs back to America, because if you did, those people get rich and then they'd start voting Republican. Instead, you say that we have to commit economic suicide and condemn generations of people, in fact, entire cities, to poverty and crime and hopelessness because of climate change. So let's talk a little bit about some undisputed historical data and not computer models that have to constantly be readjusted in order to comply with, reality. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the Cretaceous period, let's say about 80 million years ago, the center of what is now the United States, Kansas, let's say, was not 2 inches underwater or 2 feet underwater or 20 feet or 200 feet. 80 million years ago, Kansas was under 2,000 feet of water because the polar caps had completely melted. Now, current CO2 levels are about 400 parts per million. People like Mrs. Clinton are having conniption fits about it getting to 450 parts per million, but back 80 million years ago, CO2 was not 10% higher than it is today. It was 1,000% higher at about 4,000 parts per million. And there were ferns and trees and pterodactyls and plesiosaurs in Kansas. That was 80 million years ago. Here's the point. 80,000 years ago, that exact same spot in Kansas was not under 2,000 feet of water, but rather under 10,000 feet of ice. 10,000 feet, that's 2 miles of ice. How much ice is that? Well, imagine a jetliner in the distance flying over Kansas. They're at 30,000 feet, so 1/3 of the way up there, solid ice, 1/3 of the way up to the airplane. Now, my question for you, Mrs. Clinton, is this: whose coal plants and whose SUVs and whose private jets caused this somewhat significant climate change? I'll wait. Mrs. Clinton, the Earth's atmosphere has negative feedback mechanisms that stabilize temperatures, because if it didn't, well, Earth would have burned to a cinder or been frozen into a solid ball of ice 1 billion years ago. We need your help to keep these messages coming. If you want to help us make a difference, please go to BillWhittle.com and become a member.